Welcome to Days of Roar, the Detroit Tiger podcast, brought to you by the Detroit Free Press. My name is Mark Gorash. I am here with Free Press beat writer Evan Petzold. After a tragically unfun 2-4 week, we did get to see Hall of Famer Justin Verlander. And Verlander spin some voodoo, on Sunday, which was a lot of fun, by the way. Yeah, it hasn't been too fun this week, has it, Ev?
It hasn't, but watching Justin Verlander was a lot of fun. I was telling my dad, went over and saw my mom for Mother's Day on Sunday and was talking to my dad, and I said, man, there was nothing better than watching Justin Verlander pitch, listening to Dan Dickers on the radio. Like, it just felt like old times, and that was a lot of fun. Yeah, Justin Verlander, 3-time Cy Young winner, 2011 MVP, 2006 Rookie of the Year. Mark, he's approaching number 10 on the all-time strikeout list. He's about to pass Greg Maddux. He's without a doubt, in anyone's mind, a Hall of Famer. And yeah, it was incredible. I talked to him before Friday's game, and then he ended up pitching, obviously, on Sunday. And it was vintage must-see JV at Comerica Park. It was his 5th time at Comerica Park as a visiting starter in his 19-year MLB career. And he absolutely dominated. 7 innings, 2 hits, 2 walks, 1 hit batter, 8 strikeouts, 0 runs. He's 41 years old. I mean, the way that he was mixing and locating the fastball, slider, curveball, did that to perfection. I thought he did a good job of kind of relying on really an array of elevated fastballs. Sat 93, maxed out at 95, which is slower than the old days, but still, it generated 10 of his 14 whiffs. He still has that elite ride on the fastball. He put the Tigers down with his heater, set him up with the sliders and the curveballs. It was pretty vintage, man. He was a lot of fun to watch. And then I did have a good conversation with him on Friday as well.
I couldn't decide if it was poetry or brain surgery. It was one or the other. The precision was just like nothing I'd seen this year. If you looked at the heat map of what he threw, where it landed, the sequence he threw it in, how he executed it, he was like an adult playing with children, literally. It was like a daddy, throwing to 11-year-olds. I was just in awe of his execution, his plan, and just the ability to command the perimeter of the strike zone, knowing when to go to the top, how to finish hitters. I do wonder when you throw, probably over 1,000 innings on that mound, how much deja vu it must have been for him. Maybe not so much during the game, but when he's getting ready to walk off, or maybe he's on the plane last night thinking about it, had to be both weird and exhilaratingly satisfying, just the entire thing.
Well, Mark, you mentioned adults playing with kids. I take that as like when I played pickup basketball with my younger brother when he was little, and he would take it in and try to, make a layup, and I would just stand there and just swat that thing away like it was no problem. Like, that's how Verlander was against the Tigers, dissecting, mixing and matching, and really dominating across the board. And then the personal side of it, it means a lot to him to come back to Comerica Park. And obviously he pitched on Sunday, but he was around Friday, Saturday. It's the hotel, being in the same area, right? Like, seeing all these things that he grew up with. I think, it was interesting. There was, during the God Bless America song that was played, right after that, a fan had yelled out to Verlander saying, "Thanks for all the memories, a young man." And Verlander, now being 41, was kind of puzzled by that. But at the same time, you have to remember that, as Tigers fans, people that are at Comerica Park, like, everybody remembers Justin Verlander as a young man, like when he came up in the league, when he won Rookie of the Year, when he pitched in the World Series, not once but twice. Like, there were a lot of moments and memories that obviously the fans have for Verlander, but also that he has for the fans and for this organization and this franchise. So I talked to him on Friday. He was very insightful about all things pitching and how the game has changed over the years. And man, I feel like I could spend hours picking his brain about that kind of stuff. But then I asked him if he wants to return to the Tigers just for one last dance before retirement. And you know what? This is for Robin Shan, the best producer on the planet. We should just cut to the audio. I don't want to speak for the great Justin Verlander, so let's go inside the clubhouse.
I really honestly, this isn't just some bullshit answer. I kind of take my career as it comes to me and try to make decisions at the time that they're in front of me. I try not to get too far ahead or stay behind, and just try to be present and try to be as good as I possibly can for as long as I can. So, obviously I think about it, but it's not like something that, you come back here and it's like, obviously it has to be on your mind. But as far as like signing with the Tigers and coming back here, that's fate. I don't know, that's something that's out of my control. It's an unanswerable question.
That was future Hall of Famer Justin Verlander, everyone. Mark, don't you just love the way that he used the word fate? The word fate used by JV in that instance. What do you think about that?
I think it's poetry, man. I don't think you could use any description that would fit the return of Justin Verlander more than fate. But I think what we better be really clear about is Justin Verlander isn't coming back here unless there's a team ready to compete to go to the playoffs worthy of coming back too. So Justin Verlander will not be holding on and playing out the string. Justin Verlander will be playing for teams that have great chances to go to the playoffs, or he'll probably hang it up. So, he's only pitching for the end game. He's not just pitching to pitch. So I think the onus is on the Tigers and Chris Ilitch and whoever is the president of baseball operations at that point in time to put together a roster that's worthy of Justin Verlander being interested in returning.
And that's what was frustrating about this week, right? Like 2-4 record, 3 of 4 losses were close games. 2 of them were 1-run games. There were 2 games where the Tigers actually hit. It was Tuesday's game, an 11-7 win against the Cleveland Guardians, and Saturday's 8-2 win against the Houston Astros. Aside from that, Mark, the bats are missing, and it's frustrating to watch right now because when Riley Green doesn't go, the Tigers don't go. And here's what I mean. Let's take the last 19 games as an example of that. The Tigers went 7-3 in 10 games from April 21st to May 1st. During that 10-game stretch, Riley Green hit .308 with 4 home runs, 5 walks, 10 strikeouts. He was carrying. He had, again, it was like the backpack full of rocks and he was climbing up the mountain. That's what it was like. And Tigers have now followed that up with 2-9 record in the last 9 games. That's May 3rd to May 12th. Riley Green hitting just .222 with 2 home runs, 4 walks, and 13 strikeouts. The strikeouts are up a little bit, not drawing as many walks. Obviously, the 2 home runs that he had, those were in the first 4 games of this bad 9-game stretch. Riley Green's the most valuable position player on the roster. He's part of that 1-2 punch with left-hander Tarek Stubel for the most valuable player on the entire team. But when he doesn't go, the Tigers offense, more often than not, doesn't do anything. It's a lifeless entity without a red-hot Riley Green. And that's not a Riley Green problem. To your point, that's a Tigers problem. And they just haven't been able to get it going with the bats recently. It's kind of been a season-long trend. I thought maybe they were going to break out of it when we saw what they did on Tuesday in Cleveland and then maybe, Saturday in Detroit against Houston. But that hasn't been the case, man.
Well, all I can say is this was by far the most frustrating week of the season, and they just got their butts kicked all week. Couldn't get a big hit, couldn't get a big out, couldn't do anything. The ERA for the bullpen in May, which we'll get to, we'll talk about it now. The ERA for the bullpen in May is .450. They have 1 save in May. So what rescued them and, helped them manufacture wins in April has been absent in the month of May. All right, let's get to the big 2. Enough with the post-mortem. First question of the big 2. After Monday's game, which is the 41st game of the season will officially be more than 25% complete. Tigers sitting at 20-20, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think if we all would have been told if the team was 20-20 after 40 games, we wouldn't have been happy, but we probably would have taken it. So the question becomes, after 25% of the season, what are the 2024 Tigers, and do these past 20 games have an impact on what we think they will be?
So that's a sad mindset, Mark. The whole, we'll take it. Tigers fans, you don't have to take it. You don't have to take it. You don't have to be okay with mediocrity. You just don't have to be. You're 20-20. You've had a really bad stretch of baseball, and somehow you were able to survive early in the season because you were winning a bunch of one-run games. That was never realistic. That was never going to continue. And we've seen that now kind of fall apart since then. So yeah, like 20-20, sure, you say we'll take it, but do you really want to take 20-20, or would you prefer to be the 25-16 Cleveland Guardians, or the 24-16 Minnesota Twins, or the 25-17 Kansas City Royals? Nobody wants to be the 12-29 Chicago White Sox, but that's a 3-horse race right now when the Tigers are straggling behind after losing 7 of the last 9 games. Cleveland, I don't know if the bats are going to stay this hot. I don't think it's possible. Minnesota, they can't stay healthy, and I don't like their starting rotation, but the Kansas City Royals, it's a fun team. Can't believe I'm saying this, but they're kind of my favorite to win the division right now, even though I think their bullpen is significantly overperforming and will regress big time by the end of the season unless they make some moves. So where am I at with the Tigers in 2024? When you look at both the standings and you look at the production, I'm not feeling very good about them. Like, the starting rotation has been a top 5 rotation in baseball. The underlying data there aligns with the eye test and the 3.60 ERA in the rotation. I think they're going to stay at least the top 7 rotation in baseball for the rest of the season, as long as everybody stays healthy. The bullpen started off as the best bullpen in baseball, but the underlying data from the beginning suggested, like, that's batting average on balls in play, fielding independent pitching. It suggested a regression. And of course, the bullpen has regressed as of late. Now, bullpen ranks 24th in baseball with a 20.9% strikeout rate. Got to miss more bats, but still, probably a top 15 bullpen in baseball. And then there's the offense, Mark. And that's the problem. Like, that's why I don't think fans, need to settle for 20-20. And they don't have to just be okay with it, because the offense isn't very good. And I was very pro let the kids play, but the kids aren't playing very well. Spencer Torkelson in year 3 isn't doing so well. If Riley Green's not hot, the Tigers are struggling. Colt Keith is having a hard time getting going. Thankfully Mark Canha is here, because otherwise I think the offense as a whole would be pretty lifeless aside from Riley Green. The 2 catchers who were supposed to hit, Jake Rogers and Carson Kelly, they're not hitting. Wenzel Perez, for some reason, is the only rookie in baseball who can hit. Parker Meadows has already been sent down to AAA Toledo because he can't hit. So it's an offense problem for me, and that's the biggest concern. And that's why, as much as, sure, 20-20 maybe feels good coming into the season, it doesn't feel great, because I don't think about the beginning of the season anymore. I think about the fact that the Tigers have lost 7 of their last 9, and I think about the fact that they're probably somewhere between 23rd to 27th in baseball when it comes to offense. It's not good enough.
All right. So my reputation is to be brutally honest, borderline mean. So let's walk through the offense a little bit. Just let's take a minute and be fair. What are we seeing? What do we think we will see? Very important part of their offense, first base. What's it contributed so far?
Nothing.
Big giant donut. Evan Petzel just showed me a big donut for those of you that don't get to see us when they cut this up and put it on YouTube or Zoom or TikTok or God knows where. Big 0 from first base. Do we think that's changing?
I just shook my head no.
I don't think so. I'm not too confident. I'm not an optimist without reasons to be optimistic. Yeah, he's got a 7-game hitting streak. That's great. How many ground balls to left field with 2 out in the 7th inning as he contributed in that streak? Bottom line is, Spencer Torkelson's swing looks like 2022. And if you don't remember, that swing in 2022 never came back. So unless I start seeing a lot more of 2023 swing, and I wasn't too concerned in April and May about Spencer Torkelson's swing in 2023 because he was on time and hitting the ball hard, just hitting in bad luck. He is rarely, maybe 3 times this year, hit the ball hard. I think he has 3 barrels. So until I see a lot more, my expectations are pretty meager. The ugly part of that is he is the worst defensive first baseman in Major League Baseball. And when you see close plays multiple times that you start wondering if other first basemen would have made plays, there were 2 yesterday, you just realize if he's not hitting, he's bringing nothing to the table. All right, second base, Colt Keith has contributed 0 so far, which is a massive disappointment to Evan Petzold and Mark Gorash. But I think he has 8 barrels, got cheated yesterday. Gave the Miguel Cabrera answer, I hear, about the homer. Was kind of mad at it.
Well, it's not only Miguel Cabrera, it's also Nick Castellanos and Robbie Grossman and many before him. But yeah, I mean, Cole Keith has been struggling from a standpoint of like the actual numbers, right? When you look at the fact that he's hitting 177 and you got a WRC plus of 29, that's terrible. But I love the fact that he leads the Tigers with a 16.9% strikeout rate. Like he's putting the ball in play, he's doing good things. I think it's going to eventually turn from him, but so far, yes, he's contributed nothing. You are correct.
He's made some changes, gone to a toe tap, and there were some interesting things in Baseball Savant last night. If you were up real late, like Mark Gorash always stays up late, Cole Keith has the shortest bat path to the baseball in Major League Baseball. He also has one of the most mediocre bat speeds in baseball, and that adds up to a lot of nothing. But what it does tell you is he's going to make contact. The question is, can he elevate how much hard contact and how much consistent contact he's making? So I'm going to say they're going to improve quite a bit at second base in this next, say, 40 games. I look for a lot better contribution from Cole Keith. So shortstop, I think.
Do we even have to discuss it?
No. Well, look, if we're going to discuss it, we're going to discuss it. The bottom line is Javi Baez is fielded visually spectacularly, metrically slightly below average, believe it or not. And hitting, it's just not sustainable anymore. I mean, he's got a OPS barely over 400. It's bottom 3 in all of baseball if you have more than 90 at-bats, if you have what they call a qualified number of at-bats, which means you're going to have enough at-bats to be in the batting title, he would be ranked last in all of baseball. And you and I have been very supportive and very patient of Javi Baez offense. And yes, he has contributed quite a few hits with runners in scoring position. I, in fact, tweeted something out yesterday that he's vastly better than Matt Vierling with runners in scoring position. Another problem we'll get to later. But Javi Baez, you just cannot sustain a guy hitting 165 with a 440 OPS as a regular player in the major leagues. No team has ever done that. And this team will not do it either. So the question is, believe it or not, for all the merry band of Javi Baez, I told you so haters, here's the news from Mark Gorash. We'll see what Evan Petzold has to say. Javi Baez has about 4 to 6 more weeks to start hitting the ball, at least at a 550 to 600 OPS number with some occasional power, or the Detroit Tigers are going to start looking for another shortstop, because this is not sustainable if you plan on winning baseball games to have a player with a 440 OPS. You just can't do it.
Well, here's what's going to happen is once we get to the beginning of June, right around June 1st, we're going to see Ryan Kreidler come back from his hand injury, and we're going to see Eddie Leonard come back from his oblique injury. And those are going to be the first 2 options. I mean, those are the immediate options to replace Javier Baez. And that day will come. I don't foresee Javier Baez turning it on at any point. He had a pretty decent week, a couple weeks ago, and then it's just really been kind of down in the dumps ever since. And yeah, I don't see him turning it back on. I don't think he's going to get it going. It's been far too long of him playing like this. I don't have any confidence in him anymore. So Ryan Kreidler, I know he's coming back. He's rehabbing right now. Eddie Leonard, same thing, coming back and rehabbing. Those 2 guys being on the 40-man roster, they would be the first answers to really replace Javi Baez. And that would mean that Javi Baez would just sit the bench. He would ride the pine. I don't think the Tigers are going to cut him, DFA him. I mean, again, it's 4 years, $98 million.
They might.
And I don't foresee them doing that before the end of this season. That would probably be an offseason thing for me. That's where I'm at with that. They're going to keep trying. They're going to keep trying to figure something out, to find solutions, to find answers. And when you're paying a guy that much money and he has the raw talent that Javi Baez has or has had in the past, they're going to try to get it out of him. They're not just going to piss away money right now. And that's where I'm at. He'll ride the bench. He'll play against lefties. He'll become a true platoon player, somebody who rarely sees the field. And the Tigers are going to have to rely on somebody like a Ryan Kreidler or an Eddie Leonard. And I think you're right. We get 4 weeks down the road, 5 weeks down the road, both of those two players better be ready to go coming off their rehab work, because they very well could be needed on almost an everyday basis. And I'm talking Ryan Kreibler first and foremost. He's that guy first. On an everyday basis, playing shortstop for the Tigers, while Javier Baez sits the bench. That's where I'm at with him. Let's get to the next player. We can't take this long on every guy.
All right. Third base. Third base has been a struggle since Gio Urshela was hurt. Gio not only fielded the ball very, very well, and the Tigers have missed Gio Urshela's glove at third. Although he hit for no power, he did seem to chip in quite a few rally extending or run scoring hits. He was an annoying at bat. He will be back either today or tomorrow, correct?
Yeah, it sounds like Monday or Tuesday for Gio Urshela.
Matt Vierling hitting about 175 with runners in scoring position, and one of the poorest defending third basemen in baseball will play very little third base once that occurs. We'll see what happens with Zach McKinstry as things get shuffled around in the next few weeks. But third base, not a productive spot. You went over catching. I do want to chime in that Jakey Rogers is 14 for his last 43, so it's not like he isn't hitting, because he is hitting. He just isn't hitting bombs yet, but he is hitting a lot better in his last 12 games. So I think the outfield, center field's been a disaster, to say the least. Wenceel Perez kind of rescued them. He's been struggling a little bit last 7 or 8 games as the league figures him out. And that's the bottom line. The league figures everybody out. So aside from a really productive Riley Green and a very productive Mark Canha, the offense has sucked. And you just can't sustainably win baseball games having 0 or 1 run for the first 6 or 7 innings of every game. Literally every game. Okay, so I don't want to belabor the offense. It just starts getting me aggravated and mad, and we'll see what they can do. But if I was Scott Harris, the idea of saying, well, I told you it might be a struggle, and I kind of knew we weren't going to be good, and it's why I didn't pay money for people or be more, I don't want to hear that nonsense. You should be trying to win every single damn year. There's no excuse for not trying to win this year. And, I don't want to hear that rant.
And that's why fans shouldn't have to expect 20-20 after 40 games. But,
well, let's
get to question
The
two.
question is, where are we going from here? And I think we discussed that. All right, question number 2. The Tigers demoted Parker Meadows to AAA Toledo after last Monday's game, sitting 200 there, by the way. The first non-injury roster move this season. Why did it happen? What's going to take for Meadows to return? What other players should be looking over their shoulders? Might as well weave the Kenta Maeda performance into that, and how conveniently, whether it was arm soreness or a virus, landed in their lap and gave them some time to hopefully rehab him. But let's get back to Parker Meadows and what else they may have on the horizon of change. So talk to me about Parker Meadows, what you think it's going to take for him to get back here.
Yeah, obviously a lead defender in center field, and he showed that throughout his time, this season in the big leagues, but you just can't hit .096 in 32 games and expect to stick around. That's where Parker Meadows was at, and it got to a point where he just wasn't playing. He wasn't getting opportunities. Before he had gotten sent down, he had started 2 of the past 5 games, despite playing in 4 of those games, and even in those 4 games, 2 was as a defensive replacement, 2 as a starter, and only got 4 plate appearances. The Tigers just weren't, giving him opportunities to get at bats anymore. And when that happens, it's kind of time to move on. The Tigers had a string of lefties they knew they had coming up, both with the Houston Astros and with the Miami Marlins. So it was like, okay, it's about time to ship him down there to Toledo and see if he can get going again. The big problem with him has just been timing. Like, he just has not been on time for fastballs. He had a .079 batting average with a .076 expected batting average against fastballs, a miserable 28.4% whiff rate. So was swinging and missing at fastballs, not making any contact on them. And that was a big problem. He really needs to get on time for fastballs again. And if he can do that, he can come back to the Tigers and be a big contributor. Remember, this is a guy who was worth +5 defensive runs saved in center field, 95th percentile, right, with +3 outs above average for his range. He was also in the 95th percentile for his sprint speed. So he contributes in a lot of different ways, but he wasn't doing anything on offense, and the Tigers made a switch. And a lot of that, you got to give credit to Wenceel Perez for pushing the envelope there, right? Like if Wenceel Perez wasn't an option for the Tigers in center field, which again, he really struggled defensively in center field in spring training, but he's looked a lot more confident, out there so far in the big leagues. And he's also, he was hitting at the plate. He was doing damage, and he was being a positive contributor on offense. And so once the Tigers saw that they had a different option in center field, it gave them, a pretty good reason to send Parker Meadows down to AAA Toledo. We'll see how long it takes him to get back, and if he ever gets back. I hope so, because he can help out in so many different ways.
Well, there's kind of been a rule in baseball since about 1895, which is if you can't hit the fastball, you can't play in the show. So I don't want to mess with the rules from 1895, and I think Parker Meadows knows what he needs to do. Somebody that can be a huge contributor to the Tigers and be a really, really impactful player, but if you can't hit, can't play. Period. End of story. Big disappointment. Wishing him the best. Hope he gets it worked out. He's had various hitting issues his entire professional baseball career. Thought he had overcome them, but this is the second go-round in the major leagues that have really, really been difficult for him. So he's going to have to make some swing changes. He's going to have to make some brain changes, and hopefully we'll see him back contributing. There's obviously a lot of room for that. As far as Wenceel Perez, there's a lot of video out now. We'll start seeing how major league pitchers sequence and do things and what he's able to do with it, and if he's able to still continue to hit based upon how they probably have altered some of the ways they're pitching to him. The next question becomes, what's going to be different and who should be looking over their shoulders? We touched on the fact that Gio Urshela is going to go back to third base. I think that's a pretty massive improvement. The other question is, there's probably some bullpen guys that are on the verge of being swapped out. Whether they are an improvement or not, we're going to find out. But Will Vest is one of the worst ranked sliders in baseball. He is not doing much. They are now saddled with Shelby Miller's $4 million contract. They gave him a chance in leverage. He's now throwing 91. He's getting nobody of importance out. So you got some issues going on here. Like I said, bullpen's ERA 4.50 in the month of May. People are getting hit. Jason Foley's got obviously some massive mechanical problems. You don't really have a shutdown closer anymore or a guy to come rescue you like he was doing out of the gate. So what's down in the minor leagues that may be able to help them? And obviously they took a fast look at Akil Baddoo, and everybody likes to always get excited about Akil Baddoo until they watch him for like 25 at-bats and realize he can't hit. So you tell me, what do we got down there?
Mark, you burned almost all of our topics for the second half of this show. I mean, look, they got options down there. They have guys that could add Justin Henry Malloy to the 40-man. He's back from an undisclosed injury, which is really just like a lower half injury. They had a bunch of precautionary tests done, and ultimately he's fine. They just slowed him back into it. But yeah, we got a lot to discuss in the second half. When it comes to, Kenta Maeda, right, and that injury and Matt Manning coming back up, we have to talk about that. I mean, it's a viral illness for Kenta Maeda, but it comes at a very, very good time for the Tigers, and also probably a good time for Kenta Maeda too, to reset. And then when it comes down to guys down in Toledo, Bo Brisky's been pitching very well. He's someone you got to look out for if the Tigers wanted to make a swap in the bullpen. And then offensively, like, there aren't a ton of options if you're not going to call on Jace Young. Like, if you're not going to call Jace Young's name yet, which the Tigers are not going to do, you're kind of looking at Justin Henry Malloy, and that's kind of it. If you really go look at the numbers and, who's actually performing well down there and who maybe, would be able to, thrive at the big league level. But they're stuck in a weird spot because if you look at the offense, it's three guys who are really, really struggling in Spencer Torkelson, Colt Keith, and Javier Baez. And those three guys aren't going anywhere. Like, that's the thing. Like, Spencer Torkelson has hit 31 home runs in the big league. The Tigers are going to give him a long leash. Colt Keith has a contract extension that he already signed. He's getting paid right now. He's getting a long leash. Javier Baez is getting paid more than anybody. Like, he's got a long leash. So those are the guys that probably should be looking over their shoulder. Zach McKinstry also maybe could be more of a guy who could be on that chopping block as opposed to a Torkelson, Keith, or Baez. But the guys who are performing the worst are the guys who are the most likely to get the longest leash. And so that's why I'm not so sure if there's an immediate answer and an immediate swap coming beyond what we saw the Tigers do with Parker Meadows. So we'll see, and we'll dig into that a little bit more as we get going.
All right, enough of the postmortem. And man, this has been a postmortem. When we come back, we're going to talk to Cleveland Guardians beat writer Paul Hoynes, one of the best in the business, about the Guardians' great early start and can they sustain it. We'll be back in 60.
All right, I'd like to welcome Paul Hoynes, Cleveland Guardians beat writer since 1983, working for Cleveland.com. Paul went to high school in Cleveland and received his journalism degree from Marquette University. He has been the president of the Baseball Writers Association of America. He is a BBWAA voting member of the Hall of Fame. He is a living legend, both in the beat writer industry and in Cleveland sports history. And we're thankful to have Paul on the Days of Roar podcast for the first time. Paul, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Evan. Mark, thanks for having me.
For sure. I got to ask you, hey, what's it been like covering the Cleveland Guardians / Indians since 1983, man? It's been a long time.
It certainly has. I've seen a lot of bad baseball. I think I'm probably on the negative side of wins and losses, but it's been a blast. I've really enjoyed it. It's a good way to make a living and not really going to work. You know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying. Now take me to this year. The Guardians are 25-16, currently in first place in the American League Central. How do you evaluate the first 25% of the season for the Guardians in 2024?
Well, I've been surprised. I did not think they would have this kind of start. I did not think they would, score as many runs as they have. They've struggled a little bit now lately, but the offense has surprised me. I thought the pitching would be a little better than it was, but they've had a lot of injuries, and I was wondered about the bullpen, and it turns out the bullpen's the strength of the team. So all in all, it's been a pretty good start and a really good debut by the new manager, Stephen Vogt.
Yeah, we wanted to ask you about that. I mean, Tito Francona was there, it seemed like forever. Obviously one of the best managers in baseball, for sure. A lot of similarities in how they run a game to A.J. Hinch, by the way. And Stephen Vogt, longtime catcher, longtime cerebral catcher, and rookie manager. And, tell us what you think about his debut, the change, and what's different, or is there nothing really different?
Well, I think there's some differences, but Vogt was one of the first things he said is that he was inheriting a good situation, and it kind of reminded me of when Francona went to Boston. I think in 2004 took over for Grady Little, and he said, I came into a good situation, a situation that was that where a team was ready to win. I don't know if that. I don't know if there's a comparison between the Red Sox and the Guardians at this stage of, their seasons. But, Vogt said, he really said that he inherited a good situation. And there are some differences, though. He uses, Tito was kind of, he really didn't use every player on the 24, the 26-man roster. And Vogt is, really engaged the whole roster, The lineup almost changes almost every day. There's, 2 or 3 steady guys in the lineup, but that's been interesting to watch that work. He's, he doesn't seem like a rookie manager. He handles the media very well. It seems like he's been doing it for a long time.
Like a catcher.
Yeah, exactly. He talks. Yeah, he handles the game. It's not. He told us that he's been training all his life for this. It was an interesting answer. He said, this is what I've been working my whole professional career for. My father was a baseball coach. He prepared me for this. I've been working toward this goal my whole life.
That's awesome. So, hey, Paul, we got to talk about Stephen Kwan. You mentioned the offense slowing down recently. Let's talk about him, right? Stephen Kwan, what's the injury? When did it happen? What's the timeline for his return? And what's it been like for the Guardians without him in the leadoff spot? It's interesting. Mark and I always talk about Riley Green as the straw that stirs the drink for the Tigers. Do you kind of think that Stephen Kwan is that guy for the Guardians, even with Josh Naylor and Jose Ramirez in that lineup? And what's it like without him?
Yeah, it has not been very good at the top of the lineup without Kwan. He strained his left hamstring last weekend, going for a fly ball in the left field. They've tried 3 different leadoff hitters since then, and you just don't replace this guy. I think he was leading the American League in batting average, runs, and hits when he left, when he was hurt and went on the injured list. He really sets that whole offense up, and they have missed him. They've really missed him. He's not a power hitter. He's not like, Riley Green's got some pop, but this guy, he does hit 5. Yeah, I think he's got 5 home runs. So he does a lot of things, and he's a Gold Glove defender.
Well, I mean, Cleveland does have some hitting, obviously Ramirez and Naylor, but, when we faced you last week, we got beat by a David Fry home run off of Chafin, and Will Brennan did some damage. There was Rocchio contributed some stuff. I mean, there's been a vast change in the Cleveland lineup. Most of these guys, even if some that were acquired by trade, have come up through the Cleveland system, almost all homegrown guys. And, the offense, it got a lot of contributions from a lot of players that the Tigers fans have not seen very much. You think that can continue?
That was one of the reasons they didn't make any moves over the winter. They have these guys, they have all these young players. They wanted to give them a chance. Guys like Rocchio and Will Brennan. Those are the guys that are really kind of benefiting from that philosophy. And, so far, it's kind of the last year, it was, 2 years ago in 2022, that's when they really went with the youngest team in baseball. They won the division, kind of came out of nowhere. Last year, with a kind of contact first mentality, they finished second last in the big leagues in home runs. They kind of ran the bases, they stole bases. So it worked in 2022. It did the same philosophy didn't work last year, when they lost 86 games, and they've kind of, rolled that same philosophy out this year, but with a little more pop with Naylor and Ramirez, kind of supplying, the power. I think they've almost doubled their home run production from last year at this time. So, they've got the best of both worlds, and they really are aggressive on the bases, almost to a fault.
We can't ask you about this Cleveland Guardians team without asking you about Josh Naylor and Jose Ramirez. Josh Naylor, .919 OPS, 11 home runs, 30 RBIs in 39 games. Is he going to be able to keep this up? And then also, how about Jose Ramirez? Is an underrated superstar across baseball. I understand that he's a 5-time All-Star, 4-time Silver Slugger, 4 top 5 finishes in MVP voting, but it seems like Jose Ramirez flies under the radar sometimes. What do you think about those two players?
Yeah, they hit back-to-back in the lineup. They really make that lineup go. Naylor, I think, can keep. I think we've seen Naylor. The thing that's exciting about Naylor is he's getting better every year. It's from over this last 3 years, we've seen him progress. He hit he drove in 97 runs last year, missed all of August with a oblique strain. Then this year he's picked up right where he left off. He's cut down his swing. It's not that wild swing where he loses his helmet every time. And, he hits for average. He hits with runners in scoring position. So he's more than a power hitter. And Ramirez, I've seen him, since he made his big league debut. When he came up, he was a change of pace player. He was like a utility guy, a guy that would come in late in the late innings and steal a base. But he has grown into, like you said, having one of the best players in baseball, good defender, switch hitter, power hitter, and nobody runs the bases like this guy. He's 31 years old and he's still playing like a rookie.
Let's switch gears to the pitching department, specifically the starting pitchers. What do you think about the rotation? And do you think Tanner Bibee, who finished second in AL Rookie of the Year voting last season, is better than his 4.91 ERA?
Yeah, Bibee has been interesting. Like you said, he won 10 games last year, second in the AL, Rookie of the Year voting. And just kind of came up, hit the ground running last year and just took off. But this year it's been a little tougher for him. He's had trouble. He was inconsistent in spring training and it's carried right over into the season. So, that's a big question mark. We'll have to see, if he can get straightened out, but, he is healthy, and that's a key thing. The rotation really took a hit when Shane Bieber got hurt. The guy, he makes 2 starts, strikes out 20 guys, 12 scoreless innings. And all of a sudden, that we get a call. I remember it was on a weekend, they have a Zoom call with the front office. And I'm thinking, okay, they're extending him, because he's a free agent at the end of the year. But he's undergoing Tommy John surgery instead. So that's been a big blow to this rotation. And they really haven't recovered from it yet.
Yeah, it's, as far as Bibee, I mean, he threw 3 unbelievable innings the other day against the Tigers, walked out for the 4th, looked unhittable. Knocked out for the 4th, got crushed for 4 runs. He was out of the game before we knew it. It was like, what happened? It was kind of a strange outing.
Yeah, I think, he's really competitive. And I think when something starts to snowball on him, I think that kind of, it works to his disadvantage. And, I think we're seeing just a young pitcher, growing, you're trying to get through the growing pains of establishing himself as in the big leagues.
McKenzie's very good. He always throws well against the Tigers, but the depth of the rotation, not the greatest. Logan Allen didn't look too unhittable. You got Lively, you got, 57-year-old Carlos Carrasco, good to make a return visit back to Cleveland. And, but the bullpen has been really, really good. You have one of the 3 best closers probably in baseball in Emmanuel Clase, but a lot of other guys have come from nowhere to contribute. It's really been kind of the backbone of helping Cleveland get off to such a good start.
Yeah, and it started, spring training started with them losing Trevor Stephan, their, Clase setup man, to Tommy John. And, that was why there was so many questions about the pen. But, Hunter Gaddis, was a starter last year, kind of a swing guy. He's come in and, really, played the setup role, filled that setup role. You've got, a lefty in Tim Herron, who was up and down 5 times last year, that has really kind of established himself in the 6th and 7th inning. They've got another lefty, Sam Hentges, that just came back from a finger injury. So they filled in well in the bullpen. They've really done a great job. Scott Barlow came over from Kansas City. He's done, really, he's filled in, in the 6th, 7th, 8th innings. They've really gelled in that pen. And, like you said, Class A, when he's even better than I think he was last year. When he, obviously he led the big leagues in saves, but he also led the big leagues in blown saves with 12.
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, Emmanuel Clase is something different when you look at 1 walk, 20 strikeouts, 19 in the 3rd inning this season. And he hasn't regressed at all since his first season in Cleveland in 2021. It's been pretty impressive. Paul, before we get you out of here, we got to ask one reason to be excited, one reason to be concerned about the Cleveland Guardians based on what you've seen so far this season.
Okay, one reason to be concerned is that the bullpen has worked so many innings. I think they're leading the American League in innings pitched. I don't know how much longer they can do that without getting some more length from the rotation. The rotation has to get deeper into games. A reason for optimism, I'd say, is Josh Naylor and Jose Ramirez. They look like, really a good middle of the order power source for this club. And I think they have the staying power to, contribute, from here to the end of the year.
All right, and that's all we have for Paul. But, man, we really appreciate your time and your insight on the Guardians. Hopefully we can get you back on the podcast at some point in the future, especially if the Guardians are still hovering around the top of the division here as we get to the second half of the season.
Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thanks again. Everyone, that was Paul Hoynes, the longtime Cleveland Guardians beat writer for Cleveland.com. There's more to discuss this week, but first, let's take a break.
All right, we're back. I just want to say I loved Paul Hoynes. It's not often I get somebody that's as old as me on the podcast. And we talked about Municipal Stadium. I talked about the time I went to a concert there in 1973 and how dark the entire place was. But Paul Hoynes was awesome, I got to tell you. Just love.
One of a kind.
One of a kind, man. Literally, he was awesome. All right, so let's get into it. Kenta Maeda has a viral infection. I've teased you in DMs watching him last time out that something was going to happen to Kenta Maeda. Viral infection, arm soreness, personal reasons. Something was going to happen because Kenta Maeda needed some tinkering and he needed to be out of the rotation. And conveniently, a massive, respiratory infection has run through the Tigers clubhouse. Kenta Maeda, at the tail end of this, caught it. And he's now been placed on the 10-day DL, and they've already prepped it and say that he needs a few rehab starts in Toledo. Big shocker. Couldn't have been more convenient timing. Bringing up Matt Manning. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, I wonder if Mark Canha, who was dealing with the upper respiratory infection, coughed one too many times on Kenta Maeda and sent him to the IL. But yeah, the Tigers are going to put Maeda on the shelf, and he's going to miss at least 2 starts with the Tigers. It sounds like obviously he's going to miss 1 start, and then I'm going to have a rehab start with AAA Toledo, and then hopefully we'll be back after that. We'll see how long they prolong it. But yeah, it's an opportunity for them to shut him down and build him back up, and hopefully build him back up in a way in which is going to help him perform better. Like, look, it's been really, really bad. He's got a 22% whiff rate. Go back to last year, it was a 28% whiff rate. So he's not missing bats. He's not getting strikeouts. He's really not inducing any chase. He is doing a decent job of limiting extremely hard contact, generally speaking. Now he does have the home run balls that have obviously plagued him, and most of those are hard hit. But generally across the board, you go look at the average exit velocities against him. It's not terrible. But again, the guy's given up 9 home runs. It's pretty bad. And yeah, time and time again, he's gotten shelled. It's a 6.75 ERA in 7 starts, only 23 strikeouts in 30 innings. It's too many walks. It's a fastball location problem, which ultimately is causing him to have trouble with his secondary pitches. I mean, when he's right, his split finger is nasty and his slider is really good. And he's locating his fastball, and he hasn't been able to do those things. He's leaving too many pitches out over the middle, and they've gotten absolutely crushed. If you want to talk about whiff rates, the splitter has dropped from 35% last year to 26% this year. He's just not missing bats, and he's leaving things over the heart. And so, yeah, no Kenta Maeda for a little bit. That's probably a good thing for both Maeda and the Tigers, and it opens the door for a return of Matt Manning, which it is well-deserved because he was somebody that, going back to spring training, I thought of the 3 pitchers who were competing for 2 jobs. It was Matt Manning, Casey Mize, and Reese Olson. I thought Matt Manning had the best spring training. He has gotten some opportunities with the Tigers to start the season, 17 innings in 3 starts, pitching in doubleheaders. I mean, man, it was kind of crazy that he was able to pitch that many times for the Tigers early in the season. So he's no stranger to the Old English D uniform so far this season because of how many times he's pitched for the Tigers as the 27th man for doubleheaders. But now he's coming up here and can make his case to stay. We'll see what they do with Maeda. Maybe they shove him to the bullpen. Maybe they prolong the injured list a little bit longer. They could keep him on a rehab assignment for quite some time if there's still things that he needs to work on, and they could give Matt Manning even more runway. But it's a big opportunity for him. And there's also other moving pieces, too, with where the Tigers are at right now. When you look at the return of Gio Urshela, that's going to happen on Monday or Tuesday for the series against the Miami Marlins. So that's 2 players coming in, both Matt Manning and Gio Urshela, which means 2 players are going to have to be out. When the Tigers put Kenta Maeda on the injured list, they immediately recalled Akil Baddoo. But now they're going to have to bring up Matt Manning officially on Monday, Gio Urshela officially on Monday or Tuesday. That's 2 players in, 2 players out, probably Ryan Vilade and Akil Baddoo. We don't need to spend a lot of time on that, but it's a big opportunity for Matt Manning, and Kenta Maeda, Mark, he better get to work. He better get to work and figure something out.
All right, let me sum this up. Kenta Maeda, without all the peripheral data, eye test, supported by the peripheral data, bad, really, really bad. That's all I have to say.
That's 2 years, $24 million, Mark.
Yeah. It's really, in baseball terms, not a ton of money. So I'm not too worried about the money. I'm for sure not worried about Chris Ilitch's money. They probably made that much at the casino in the last 3 days. So I'm not holding, a pity party for Chris and $24 million. The answer, Kenta Maeda, very bad. Now, Matt Manning, here's what I got to say about Matt Manning. I've been a big Matt Manning supporter. Was not real happy with the last start I saw from him because I'm getting tired of the wilting and the mistakes and the kind of good, but then not really good, but better than you think. But, the bottom line is Matt Manning not getting any younger, not getting many more opportunities as a Detroit Tiger. If you're going to be one of the guys, now's the time, baby. If you throw well, I promise you're not leaving. So you got 3, 4, maybe 5 starts a month, close to a month. You got 20 days of starts. Carpe diem, brother. You better do something now, okay? Because if you don't, your tenure as a Detroit Tiger is probably getting close to over. So whether they move you, whether they don't recall you, whether there's other people that move ahead of you in the pecking order in Toledo, all possible. Give me some thoughts on that.
I'm right there with you. It's time to seize the day for him, no doubt about it. We'll see if he's up to the challenge.
Put on your big boy pants, stop whining, start producing, period. The capacity, his breaking pitches have never been better. His fastball, there's a long history of good data on his fastball. He has a really, really good fastball. So stop leaving pitches in the middle of the plate. It's weird. We're going to talk about Tarik Skubal in a second, but when I was thinking about Matt Manning, the thought occurred to me, there's a lot of similarities to what Tarik Skubal was 2 years ago when Tarik Skubal gave up 35 homers. And Tarik Skubal learned to not miss in the middle of the plate, besides obviously sharpening his pitches to a surgical razor's edge. But there's something to be said for learning how to miss outside the nitro zone. I would hope that Matt Manning is old enough, mature enough to start understanding that and executing that. All right, let's get to something happy about the Detroit Tigers, because there's literally been nothing happy about the Detroit Tigers in the last week except one thing. Tarik Bulldog Skubal. First ace since Justin Verlander. Is that a fair way to explain him? Because he's been the best pitcher in baseball for the last 20 weeks.
Yep, I like that you mentioned 20 weeks because it's been a really long time that Tarik Skubal has been really good. I want to start there. Let's go back and look at what he's done going back to last season. I mean, even if you want to take his last 13 starts, it's 14 earned runs in his last 13 starts dating back to last season. That's an incredible 1.59 ERA, 103 strikeouts, 79 innings during that run. It's incredible. But let's go back even further. Let's look at when Tarik Skubal last season came back from flexor tendon surgery on his left elbow. That was approximately 10 months ago. 2.51 ERA, 162 strikeouts across 129 and 1/3 inning in 23 starts. His 5.1 F4, that's Fangraphs wins above replacement, ranks first among all pitchers since his July 4th return. That's ahead of Philadelphia Phillies right-hander Zach Wheeler and Los Angeles Dodgers right-hander Tyler Glasnow, both at 4.3 F4. Tarik Skubal is at 5.1 F4, leading all of baseball since July 4th, 2023. The next two guys on that list are at 4.3. Tarik Skubal has been by far and away the best pitcher in baseball going back to July 2023. He is consistently dominant as the ace of the Tigers, just like Justin Verlander used to be. And if you look at his numbers this year, he is currently the front runner to win the American League Cy Young. He commands a 2.02 ERA with 8 walks and 60 strikeouts across 49 innings in 8 starts. Among AL pitchers, 3rd in ERA, 2nd in strikeouts, 4th in strikeout rate, 7th in walk rate, tied for 6th in innings pitched. Tarik Skubal is dominant. Tarik Skubal is a beast. Tarik Skubal can take down any lineup. He can slice and dice. He can do whatever he wants. And I know that he's not Justin Verlander caliber from like a Hall of Fame standpoint. Like he's got a lot of innings to pitch and a lot of strikeouts to rack up, like almost 3,000 innings to get and then 3,000 strikeouts to rack up before he's going to be able to catch JV. So I'm not comparing them in that way, but when you talk about sheer dominance, pound it down your throat, pure competitive mode, like, oh my gosh, like, yes, like there is a comparison between these two guys. This is the Tigers' first true ace since Justin Verlander. It's now. I mean, it's almost a full season. We talk about a full season being 30 starts. I did the data dive on the 23 starts since he came back from flexor tendon surgery. That's almost a full season, and he's been far and away the best pitcher in baseball. It's so much fun to watch. It's incredible, Mark. There's no other way to say it.
Led baseball in WAR upon his return in 2023 from the time he began throwing to the end of the year. Currently, number 1 in Fangraphs pitcher WAR, 1.8 WAR. So hasn't missed a beat. About as good as it gets. I thought it was kind of fun for Justin Verlander to get to watch Tarik Skubal look a lot like Justin Verlander the other night. Really, really, really good. And he's been literally really good every single time out. So pretty exciting. Hopefully, the other thing I'd like to say about Skubal that's been really impressive is there's only been one start where he didn't exhibit just total dominance in pitch economy. So he's been able to pitch pretty deep almost every time out, walking almost nobody, and the precision of his pitches and his capacity to mix things up and change things in the course of a game and times through the order has, been pretty awe-inspiring. So mind you of both Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer, where hitters almost look like they don't even have a chance. Kind of looked like the Tiger hitters against Justin Verlander yesterday, and that was not vintage power Justin Verlander. So Tarik Skubal, pretty awesome. So let's get into Jack Flaherty. I'm not a super Jack Flaherty guy, but I got to tip my hat to him. These past few starts have been really, really dominant. Been really, really good about now finally starting to limit run scoring against him besides racking up a ton of strikeouts. And I think if I'm not incorrect, he does lead the American League in strikeouts, correct?
It's a boatload of strikeouts. And he's also done a really good job, Mark, of limiting the walks as well. He only had 1 2-walk game. It's been 0 walks, 1, 2, 1, 0, 1, 1, 0. Guy's not walking anybody, and he's racking up the Ks.
He's been really pretty damn good. Good for him. Jeff Seidel wrote a really good story in the Freep. If you want to take a look at it about his relationship with his mom, it's pretty interesting. Something to keep watching about Jack Flaherty. They've done an outstanding job of sort of improving his consistency, and he seems to be getting better. And I'm excited to see where it goes from here.
Mark, I actually don't think we're talking enough about Jack Flaherty. When you go back and you look at his last 3 starts, 2 walks, 27 strikeouts in 19 1/3 innings, he's been pure dominant. Like if you go back and you even look at like the metrics on the pitches, it's 28% whiff rate on the fastball compared to 20% last year. It's a 40% whiff rate on the slider compared to a 26% whiff rate last year. He's missing more bats. The slider's really good. The fastballs come along with it. The curveball, of course, has been good. Like Jack Flaherty's doing a lot of really good things. You go look at his Baseball Savant page, baseballsavant.com. You look up Jack Flaherty, you're going to see a lot of red on that page. He ranks in the 97th percentile in whiff rate, 94th percentile in strikeout rate, 97th percentile in walk rate. That's a recipe for success. He's getting some chase too, 75th percentile chase rate. So he's been really good. This is going to be fascinating to monitor as we go along in the season. He's found something, though, because this is different than Jack Flaherty has been in a really long time. This is the best version of Jack Flaherty that we've seen since 2019. And it's been a really long time since he's been this good. I think he's found something here.
Hard to argue that. What I really have liked the last 2 starts is he wins the race 2 strikes, and then he's been finishing hitters. Whether they put the ball in play weekly or whether he strikes them out, which he's been doing quite often. So hat tip to Jack Flaherty. Let's hope he can continue it. One last thing. Let's talk for a minute about the City Connect uniforms. Did you love them or did you hate them? Mark Gorash actually thought they looked way better in the game than you might have thought. I also want to give a shout out to our boy Ben Fiddleman, who was, supposed to send a box with all the City Connect stuff to Mark Gorash's house. I think everybody got one.
Are you jealous that you haven't got your influencer box yet?
Did I give my address incorrectly? I mean, I'm a little worried now that the Tigers have my address, and I've been known to say a few things, and I'm hoping some people don't show up here and want to have a talk with me. But
or kidnap you.
Well, for 68, I'm in pretty good shape. I lost a lot of weight. I'm looking pretty good. I look like, I'm probably 58. And, I'm ready if we have a problem, but I kind of like the unis. So shout out to Ben. I really appreciated the thought that they were going to send me something. And, look,
I'm sure we'll get it sorted out, Mark. I got my influencer box. It's great. It had a jersey in there and a hat and all that kind of stuff.
it's
And
probably,
I like the jerseys too. Dude, I like the jerseys. And I like the black pants. I think that's what I like the most. When I watched them in the game in person, it was like, oh, wow. Like, the black pants really do make that jersey pop even more. And you didn't really get that feel just based off of the photos that they showed. So once I actually saw it, I really liked it. I like the design. I like the M1 road sign that's on the side patch, for the first paved road in America that dates back to 1909. That was really cool. I think that's probably my favorite part of the whole jersey. I also think that the VIN number that's on both the hats and that's on the helmets and also on the back, kind of tag of the jersey, that's really cool because it's, again, 1901, the Tigers membership into the American League. And then obviously there are 2 digits for each of the 4 World Series championships, 1935, 1945, 1968, and 1984. That's all mixed into the VIN number, which I think is really cool and pretty unique. And then obviously there's like the whole electric blue vibe, trying to, be forward thinking, looking towards the future, both for the team and also for the auto industry, the way that they have the treads that are shaded in that electric blue color going up the front of the jersey. I thought it was a pretty clean look. I don't like the hat. Not a lot of people like the hat. I get that. But again, when you're a team that has the Old English D, such a classic logo, it's really hard to come up with an alternate jersey that people are going to like because the Old English D is such an iconic logo. And I thought, all things considered, the Tigers did a pretty good job here with Nike.
Yeah, you look pretty good. I also want to say, best part of the entire ensemble, the helmet. You left that out. Helmet is badass. All right, it's time for us to get out of here. Let's pray they start playing better baseball because it's just brutal when they don't. It's brutal to watch. It's brutal to talk about.
And let's pray you get that influencer box.
Yeah, I'm sure it's just lost in the mail. I mean, there's, probably some small problem with that. And I really appreciate the thought of sending Mark Gorash an influencer box. I'd like to remind everybody to please like, rate, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, you name it. You can always find us embedded in every Evan Petzold article at freep.com. Easy place to find us, usually Monday about 4 o'clock. I'd like to thank our executive producer, Kirk Crawford, and the Free Press editor, Nicole Avery Nichols, our producer, the man who saves us every single week, Robin Chan, who popped into our last podcast. We need to have Robin Chan on our pod.
I second that.
All right. Love to my grandson, the spectacular Braden Michael Gorash, and his mommy, Samantha Gorash, for taking care of my boys. Shout out to Savannah Petzold for taking care of Evan Petzold. You got a shout out this week too, don't you?
Yeah, I got to give a shout out to my mom, Jennifer Petzold. Thank you for all the love, the support. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Thanks for reading all my stories. And also a special shout out to my grandmother, Linda's work, who recently discovered the podcast and now is a loyal listener of Days of Roar. Shout out to you, Linda. Thank you so much also for your support. She cuts out, Mark, this is really cool. My grandma cuts out every one of the stories that I write in the Free Press, and she keeps it all in a binder. So she's got like binders on binders on binders now. Stacks of newspaper stories, that I've written. And that means the world to me. Like, that means more than she'll ever know. And now she's a listener to Days of Roar. So Linda's work, thank you so much for listening. We love you.
And shout out to my wife, Mrs. Sandy Gorash, mother of Jordan Gorash. And shout out to my mother, 86-year-old Lenore Gorash, still chugging pretty strong. Just make sure I take her out to lunch every week. And if I don't, I hear about it. So I'd like to say to all the moms out there, happy Mother's Day yesterday. We'll be back next week. And to everyone, peace.